I came to my son's wedding in an ivory dress. I paid a few $100s for it and felt like a real queen. But my older grandchildren were running around mischievous Tomas and Lucy, who just turned 6 in April. They pushed me and I spilled wine on myself. My son's bride made fun of me in front of 200 guests, although I paid for everything she had that day, the entire wedding for 200 people. She said, "You can't ruin your flimsy dress anymore, so relax. We'll pretend that it's supposed to be like this, that you came in this way." I looked at my son and a tear rolled down my cheek, and he stood up, took the microphone and told everyone to go home, and then turned to his bride. "There will be no wedding. Nancy, you have crossed the line." You should have seen her face. If you're listening to this on YouTube right now, yes, you heard that correctly. My son canceled his own wedding in the middle of the reception because his bride mocked me in front of everyone. And before you start thinking, "Oh, poor Diana, what a tragedy," let me stop you right there. I'm 60, not made of porcelain. I've been through worse than a ruined dress and a humiliated ego. But this story isn't just about that moment. That mess of chiffon, spilled merlet, and public cruelty. That was just the spark. The fire started a long time before the ivory dress. My name is Diana. I raised 2 kids alone, my daughter Elena and my son, Adam. Their father contributed exactly one thing of value to my life, their DNA. After that, he contributed mostly disappointment, bad credit, and one spectacular memory of his taillights disappearing down the street when Adam was 4 and Elena was 6. Back then, I didn't have ivory dresses. I had a blue supermarket apron with my name on a plastic badge. I had a third-hand car that coughed every winter like it had asthma. I had 2 little faces watching me every morning, trying to figure out if the grown-up in the house was strong enough to keep the roof from caving in. Spoiler, I was. For years, I slept 4 hours a night. 4, that's not a number. That's an insult. Morning shift at the diner from AM to PM, afternoon cleaning offices from PM to 7. Night shift stocking shelves at the grocery store from PM to AM. In between, I squeezed in everything else: homework help, chicken soup, laundry that never ended, school meetings where the other mothers wore perfume and had opinions about organic snacks. I smelled like French fries and bleach, and my opinions were, "Please pass my kids. Please don't let them notice how tired I am." I used to stand over the sink at 3 in the morning, my hands cracked from dish soap and cheap detergent, and whisper to myself, "You're not allowed to break. You break, they fall." I didn't break. I saved every dollar I could. Coins in a chipped mug over the fridge, crumpled bills in an envelope hidden under the cleaning rags in the pantry. To the kids, I made it a game. "Why do you work so much, Mom?" Elena asked me once, when she was 8. She had my eyes and her father's tendency to stare straight through your nonsense. "So you don't ever have to ask some man for permission to live," I told her. Remember that. Adam, at 6, just wanted to know if working 3 jobs meant extra ice cream. He was always my soft-hearted one. Elena came out of the womb negotiating. Adam came out apologizing for taking up space. Life was hard, but it was simple. You work, you pay the bills, you love your kids. Repeat until the grave. And then my grandfather died. My grandfather was the only person in my family who believed I wasn't crazy when I said, "I'm going to build something for these kids. Something real." He was an old-fashioned man with thick glasses and a sharper mind than anyone gave him credit for. While my parents were busy telling me I'd ruined my life by having too many children with the wrong man, Grandpa Emil was the one who showed up with boxes of groceries and said, "You're stronger than all of them put together." He had a little farm outside the city and a mysterious way of never being quite as broke as everyone thought he should be. I knew he had some savings. I didn't know the meaning of some. He passed away when Elena and Adam were 10 and 8. I cried, the kids cried, and I went back to work at the diner, because grief doesn't pay for heat. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I came home from my cleaning job and found a thick envelope stuck in the screen door. Elegant envelope. The kind that looks like it belongs at a wedding. Not in the hands of a woman who still had glass cleaner on her sleeves. "Mom, it says attorney at law," Elena announced, because of course she'd opened the door first and inspected the envelope like a detective. "Did you do a crime?" "Not yet," I said. "Give it time." I sat at the rickety kitchen table, tore it open, and the world tilted. I won't bore you with the exact legal language. The important parts were, my grandfather had left everything to me. Everything turned out to be a sprawling old estate with a big house, guest cottage, some land, and several accounts that added up to, excuse me, what kind of money? The numbers swam on the page. Millions. Not 1 million. Several. My face went cold and hot at the same time. I looked up at the cracked ceiling, half expecting my grandfather's ghost to drop down and say, "Surprise, kiddo." Instead, Adam slurped his cereal and asked if we could buy a PlayStation. "Maybe," I said faintly. "Maybe we can buy the company." He didn't get the joke. I barely did. That night, I sat up long after the kids went to bed, papers spread around me, running the numbers again and again. I was exhausted, broken every way except the one that suddenly mattered, and absolutely terrified. Money this big doesn't just change numbers in a bank. It changes people. It changes how they look at you, talk to you, use you. I knew that much, even if I'd never had more than 2 digits in my account after the decimal point. The next day, I called the lawyer. 2 weeks later, we moved. The first time we drove up the long tree-lined driveway, the kids fell silent. That alone was worth at least $500,000. The house was straight out of some movie. Tall white columns, wide wraparound porch, windows like it was watching you back. There was a fountain out front that had seen better days, and a garden that clearly missed my grandfather, but even overgrown, it was beautiful. "Is this ours?" Adam whispered. "It's yours," I told them, "and mine, and your children's if you don't grow up to be idiots." Elena blinked at the house like she'd discovered oxygen. "Do we live here now?" "Yes." "Like, sleep in it? Use the bathrooms? Without being arrested?" "Yes, Elena." She grabbed Adam's hand and they took off, running up the steps, their worn-out sneakers slapping against the wood. I watched them, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt something close to peace. But I made myself a promise that first night. This money will not ruin them. I kept my diner job for 3 more months while I sorted the legal mess and met with financial advisors. I stopped cleaning offices and stocking shelves, but I didn't stop working. I learned words like index fund and diversified portfolio. I sat in a glass office with a man in an expensive tie who kept trying to explain things to me like I was 6, and I interrupted him to ask about tax efficiency and real estate trusts. After the 3rd meeting, he stopped talking slowly and started taking notes. When I spoke, we hired staff, not servants. I hated that word. A housekeeper twice a week, a gardener, and later, a driver who helped me with errands when my back started protesting all those years of carrying the world. But here's what I did not hire: a nanny. I woke my kids up the same way I always had, with my voice and the smell of coffee. I drove them to school in a better car, sure, but I still muttered at traffic and sang along badly to the radio. They got nicer clothes, but not whenever they snapped their fingers. They still had chores. The estate had more floors to mop, more bathrooms to clean, more leaves to rake. Congratulations, you're rich and you've inherited more ways to get sweaty. On the first Saturday in the new house, Adam grumbled when I handed him a rake. "We're rich now," he said, rolling his eyes. "Can't someone do this for us?" "Yes," I said. "You can." Elena smirked. "She got you there." I put both of them to work, right beside me. "Listen to me," I told them, out on that big lawn under the old oak tree. "A lot of money in the bank is not a reason to become lazy. It's a reason to become smarter. We've been poor. We know how to fight. Now we're going to learn how to win without turning into villains. Deal?" "Deal," Elena said immediately. Adam looked less convinced. "Do winners get to sleep in on weekends?" "Nice try." We built a life there. Birthdays on the back patio, Christmases in a living room big enough to swallow our old apartment twice. I turned one of the rooms into a little office, my command center, investments, budgets, charity projects. I donated quietly to the local shelter, funded scholarships under my grandfather's name, not mine. I didn't want my kids growing up thinking generosity was a performance. Years passed. They grew up. Elena became the kind of woman who walked into a room like she'd designed it. Smart, sharp, independent, just like I'd wanted. She married young, to a gentle-eyed paramedic named Tomas who adored her. They had 2 kids, mischievous little lunatics named Yes Tomas and Lucy. Those are the same 2 who later used my ivory dress as a crash barrier, in case you're keeping track. Adam, meanwhile, took longer to find himself. He studied business, then dropped out, then worked, then traveled, then worked again. Sensitive heart, big brain, slow to commit to anything except his family. He loved this house like it was stitched into his bones. Which is why, when he walked in on Thanksgiving with a stranger on his arm and that unusual light in his eyes, I knew two things. 1. He was in love. 2. My life was about to get complicated. I was in the kitchen, basting the turkey and arguing with the oven, when I heard the front door open and Elena's kids shriek, "Uncle Autumn." Then another sound, a laugh I didn't recognize, high bright, with something sharp hiding underneath, like glass under sugar. I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped out of the kitchen. Adam stood there with a woman tucked neatly under his arm. She was beautiful in that very deliberate way, sleek brown hair in a perfect bun, makeup like a magazine cover, nails like tiny polished knives. Her dress probably cost more than my first car and showed less fabric than my old waitress uniform. "Mom," Adam said, his face lighting up when he saw me. "This is Nancy." Nancy gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mrs. Carter," she purred, extending a manicured hand. "I've heard so much about you." "That's brave of you to admit," I said, shaking her hand. "Please, call me Diana. Only telemarketers call me Mrs. Carter." She laughed like I'd told the funniest joke since 1982. "Of course, Diana." Elena appeared, wiping her hands. She gave Nancy a quick hug, whispered something polite, then shot me a look over Nancy's shoulder. The look said, "We'll talk later." We all drifted toward the dining room. The table was set for Thanksgiving the way I liked it. My grandmother's china, candles, linen napkins folded into little fans, nothing Instagram perfect, but warm, lived in. Nancy's eyebrows lifted as she scanned the room. "Oh," she said, "it's very traditional. That's code for old, in case you're wondering," Elena muttered to me as she passed, carrying a bowl of potatoes. I ignored her and motioned everyone to sit. Dinner started well enough. I asked Nancy about her work, something in marketing, of course. She talked about her clients, her projects, her Ivy League degree. Adam watched her like she hung the moon. I watched her like she was a new plant I wasn't sure belonged in my garden. Then we got to the food. "I made the stuffing from Grandpa Emil's recipe," I said, passing the dish to Nancy. "He swore it cured all heartbreak." Nancy took a polite spoonful, sniffed it, and smiled tightly. "It looks hearty." In my experience, that word is rarely a compliment. She put a bite in her mouth, chewed, and then blinked. "Oh, it's very salty and heavy, but I guess that's authentic, right?" "It's grandma authentic," I said. "We survived on this during entire winters." Tomas, my grandson, piped up. "I like it. It tastes like Thanksgiving." "Exactly," I said. Nancy dabbed delicately at her lips with the napkin. "My mother always says good food shouldn't make you feel like you've been hit by a truck." "Your mother and I have very different hobbies," I replied. Across the table, Elena choked on her wine. Nancy's gaze shifted to the chandelier. "And this house, it's very old world. The dark wood, the heavy curtains. It's a historic house," I said calmly. "We like to keep it that way." "Oh, of course," she said quickly. "I just meant, with a house this large, you could do such amazing renovations. Knock down this wall, open up the dining room, something more modern and minimal. Maybe get rid of the wallpaper. It's a little," she searched for a word, "busy." I set my fork down. "My grandfather picked that wallpaper," I said. "He said every flower reminded him not to give up." "Well," Nancy said brightly, "he's not living here anymore, is he?" Silence fell over the table like a dropped curtain. Adam shifted in his chair. "Nance." "Oh, I didn't mean anything by it," she rushed to add. I work with interiors a lot. I have an eye for these things. You could get an incredible price if you ever sold it." "I'm not selling my home," I said. She gave me a pitying look. "You might change your mind one day. These big old estates are a lot for someone your age to manage." I smiled, slow and sharp. "Lucky for me, I have 2 strong adult children who know better than to suggest selling the family home for an open-plan kitchen and an island that looks good in selfies." Elena lifted her glass. "Here, here." Adam cleared his throat. "Okay, maybe we can talk about something else?" We did, for a while, but the tone was set, and I'd heard enough. Nancy didn't say anything outright cruel that night. It was all little cuts. About the gravy, so much butter, wow. About the pie, we usually do something lighter. About the estate, we had a place like this back home, only with better light and less clutter. Back home. At that point, all I knew was that back home was somewhere in Europe, Czech Republic. I'd later learn. She tossed it out like it was a gold badge. Old European family, good schools, sophisticated taste. By the time dessert was done, I had a tight smile and a headache. But Adam looked blissfully happy, and that mattered more to me than my wallpaper. When everyone had migrated to the living room, Elena cornered me in the kitchen. Well, she asked, drying a dish too aggressively. Do we like her? We do not, I said. But he does, she sighed. I knew you'd say that. He's in love, I said. When someone's in love, their IQ drops by a minimum of 20 points. Minimum, she agreed. So what do? We watch, I said. We listen. And unless she hits him with the car, we don't interfere until we absolutely have to. I could have never guessed how soon absolutely would arrive. Adam waited exactly 3 weeks after Thanksgiving to tell me he was going to propose. We were in the garden, pruning roses. He'd always liked to help me out there, probably because it was the one place I let myself slow down. There's something about dirt under your nails that reminds you you're still alive. Mom, he said, clipping a little too close to a bud. Yes, love, Nancy and I, we're thinking about getting married. Thinking, I repeated, trimming a branch. Is that the word you're going with? He laughed nervously. Okay, we're not just thinking. I bought a ring. I straightened slowly. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything, he said. And he meant it. I could hear it, feel it, see it in the way his hands shook a little. She's been through a lot. She's really independent. She understands me. I know you two didn't exactly hit it off at Thanksgiving, but I didn't say that. I interrupted smoothly. It was true. I didn't say it. I thought it at maximum volume. He looked at the house, then back at me. I need you to try, Mom. Please. There it was. Not a request about money, or the estate, or anything else. Just his heart in my hands like when he was 5 and fell off his bike. I will try, I said. And I will support you. His shoulders sagged in relief. Thank you. We want to have the wedding here. If that's okay. Of course they did. He started rambling about guests and dates and logistics, but I barely heard him. I looked up at the old house, imagining flowers draped over the porch, music spilling out of the open doors, my son in a suit, my soon-to-be daughter-in-law pretending she didn't want to tear out the wallpaper before the cake was cut. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that grown children choose their partners, not their mothers, that loving your kids sometimes means accepting people you don't like. So I said the words that set this whole circus rolling. Yes, we'll have the wedding here. I'll take care of everything. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have spent that money on a month in Italy, a new knee, and a very competent therapist instead. Planning a wedding for 200 people is essentially planning a small war. The florist against the budget, the caterer against the bride's Pinterest board, the photographer against reality. I've done harder things in my life, but few as tedious. At first, it went fine. Nancy came over with swatches and mood boards. She'd sit at my big dining table, talking about aesthetic and vibes, while I jotted down practical details like how many vegetarian guests we had and whether the driveway could handle that many cars. All ivory, she said once, spreading out pictures. Ivory flowers, ivory chairs, ivory linens. Clean, elegant, timeless, expensive, I added. She waved a hand. You said you wanted to give us the wedding of our dreams. I said I'd host it, I corrected. There's a difference between dreams and delusions. We'll find the middle. She didn't like that. The first crack in her smooth surface. But she smiled. She always smiled, at least in front of Adam. It was a few days before the wedding that the smiling stopped. It started with the cake. The baker delivered a test-tier vanilla with raspberry filling. It was delicious. Everyone said so. Everyone except Nancy. It's dry, she declared, after a single bite. Do you want our guests to choke? The poor baker, a woman named Carla who had survived 3 teenage sons and 1 divorce, blinked. I can add more syrup, but this is our most popular. It's unacceptable, Nancy snapped. Throw it out. Throw it? Carla stared at the cake like she might throw Nancy out. Now wait, I said, stepping between them. The cake is fine. It doesn't deserve to be thrown anywhere except into my mouth. We can tweak it, but we're not starting from scratch for days before the wedding. Nancy shot me a look that could have frosted the windows. It's my wedding. Yes, I said, and it's my house, my money, my decision. We compromise or we eat Costco sheet cake. Your choice. Adam stepped in, left arm wrapping around Nancy's waist. Hey, let's all just calm down. Nance, the cake's good, okay? My mom knows what she's doing. Nancy's face did that tight thing again, the controlled anger. But in front of him, she exhaled and smiled. Fine, she said. If you like it, then it's okay. She kissed his cheek. Over his shoulder, she glared at me. I wish I could say that was the worst of it. It was just the warm-up. Over the next days, I watched her unravel in slow motion. She screamed at the florist on the phone because the roses were too creamy, not ivory enough. She called the rental company incompetent because the chairs were a slightly different shade than the tablecloths. She broke 3 plates in my kitchen because the caterer suggested adding a chicken option to the menu in case the older guests don't like sea bass. These people, she hissed to me afterward, pacing the hallway, her voice low but vibrating with fury. They don't understand standard. They're lazy. I'm surrounded by lazy idiots. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. You seem tense. Tense? She laughed too loud. I am organizing everything while your staff bumbles around. Your housekeeper misplaced the seating chart. Your gardener hasn't trimmed that ugly hedge near the driveway. How will the photos look? They'll look like real life, I said, which is still allowed last time I checked. She stepped closer. I could smell her perfume, something expensive that still couldn't mask the soreness of her mood. Maybe if you'd done events like this before, you'd understand the pressure, she said. I've done things harder than this, I replied calmly. Like raising the man you're marrying by myself while working 3 jobs. Planning a wedding doesn't even crack the top 10. She scoffed. Right, the martyr routine. There it was. The real Nancy, slipping out for a second. I studied her face, the tight jawline, the little twitch in her cheek. I wondered, not for the first time, what she wanted more, my son or my life. Later that night, I heard raised voices from Adam's room at the far end of the corridor. His door was closed, but sound travels in old houses. I can't deal with this. Adam, Nancy was crying. Your mother questions everything. She doesn't respect me. This is our wedding. She's paying for everything, Adam said, voice tired but gentle. It's her house, Nance. We could have done it somewhere smaller. So now I'm a gold digger, she snapped. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Her voice cracked. You know I'm alone here. My visa. She stopped abruptly. My what? I held my breath. Adam lowered his voice. We will figure that out, he said. You know that. Just trust me. And trust my mom, okay? She loves me. She doesn't love me, Nancy shot back. She tolerates me. That's not the same. Then the crying started again, and I backed away. I'm many things, but I'm not a complete eavesdropping monster, I told myself. She's stressed. Weddings turn people weird. It'll settle down after. I should have listened to my gut, not my excuses. 2 days before the ceremony, Nancy hit a new level. It started with the staff. Marta, my housekeeper of 10 years, came into the kitchen with her eyes red. What's wrong? I asked, stirring a pot of soup. It's Miss Nancy, she said. She says I am stupid because I put the wrong candles in the ballroom. She shouted. She threw them on the floor and said if I worked for her, she would fire me yesterday. My spoon froze. Did she apologize? Marta shook her head. She told me, go cry somewhere else. I don't have time for incompetence. I put the burner on low. My heart was already simmering hotter than the soup. Where is she? I asked. Marta gestured toward the ballroom, arranging chairs, moving them again and again and again. I found Nancy in the ballroom, dragging a chair 2 inches to the left, then stepping back to glare at it. Nancy, I said. She jumped. What? We need to talk. I don't have time for a heart-to-heart. Diana, she snapped. The photographer says the aisle has to be exactly centered between the windows, and your staff can't count identical chair spacing. Marta has worked for me for a decade, I said, keeping my voice steady. She is not incompetent, and no one screams at my staff in my house, not even you. Her eyes flashed. I didn't scream. I stared at her. Fine, she said. I raised my voice. Do you want the truth? I am under a lot of pressure. This wedding has to be perfect. My family is watching. Your guests are watching. The embassy. She clamped her mouth shut again. There it was again. Embassy. You are not the only one under pressure, I said. My name is on every contract. I'm the one writing the checks, and I don't pay people to be disrespected. She threw her hands up. There it is. You and your money. Yes, I said calmly. Me and my money, which means me and my rules. She stared at me for a long moment. I watched the calculation flicker behind her eyes. Then she inhaled, pasted on that shiny smile, and said, "You're right. I shouldn't have yelled. I'll apologize." "Happy? I won't be truly happy," I replied, "until my son is married to someone who doesn't treat people like props. But this is a start." Her smile slipped. "Careful, Diana. You're sounding like you want this wedding to fail." "Oh, I don't want it to fail at all," I said. "Not yet anyway." She frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "that if this wedding fails, it won't be because of me." I left her standing there, furious and confused, and went back to the kitchen. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan and thought, maybe she's pregnant. Hormones. That would explain the mood swings, the sudden tears, the way Adam keeps fussing over her. The idea softened me. If she was carrying my future grandchild, then all this drama was just turbulence before landing. The next morning, I mentioned it to Elena while we folded napkins. "You think she's pregnant?" Elena snorted. "I think she's possessed. But sure, hormones are an option. If she is," I said, "we'll have to be even more careful." "Mom," Elena said, putting a napkin down and taking my hand. "Careful is one thing. Letting someone wreck your house and your people is another." "I know," I said. "Believe me, I know. I just didn't yet know how far Nancy was willing to go." And now we circle back to the beginning. The ivory dress, the wine, the humiliation. By the day of the wedding, I was running on caffeine and willpower. The estate looked stunning, even I had to admit that. The gardens were trimmed, the fountain fixed and bubbling sparkled in the sunshine. White chairs lined the lawn, and ivory roses climbed the arch where Adam and Nancy were supposed to say their vows. Inside the house, staff moved like a small army polishing glasses, arranging tables, checking place cards. I'd spent a disgusting amount of money on everything: the live band, the open bar, the photographer who specialized in luxury events, which, near as I can tell, means they charge twice as much to press the same button. I'd chosen my dress carefully: ivory chiffon, soft and elegant, modest neckline, flowing skirt. I'd looked at myself in the mirror and thought, not bad for 60-old girl. We've seen worse days. I felt proud, not just of how I looked, but of what I'd built. I was about to give my son a beautiful day. Whatever I thought of his bride, I was going to be gracious. Guests started arriving: cousins, old friends, business contacts, neighbors. The lawn filled with laughter and clinking glasses. Elena's kids, Tomas and Lucy, darted between legs like small missiles, high on sugar and attention. The ceremony, you'll be glad to hear, went off without a disaster. The vows were said, rings exchanged, a few tears shed. I watched my son's face when he looked at her. He looked certain, like he'd chosen his path. Maybe, I thought, I'm wrong about her. People can be difficult and still be good. Optimism has always been my most dangerous habit. It was at the reception, in the big tent on the lawn, that everything cracked open. The band was playing something upbeat. People were dancing. I stood near the bar, chatting with an old family friend, holding a glass of red wine. Lucy and Tomas came racing through, chasing a balloon. "Kids, slow down," Elena called, but they were 6 and high on cake. Physics was not their concern. They slammed into me from behind. The world went slow for a second. My arm jerked. The glass tipped. The wine arced through the air in a perfect red wave and crashed against my ivory dress. It soaked through the chiffon, down the bodice, splattering my shoes. I looked down and saw a crime scene. "Oh no," Tomas gasped. "Grandma." "I'm fine," I said automatically, because that's what mothers do, declare themselves fine even when the house is on fire. Around us, conversations faltered. Heads turned. The bride, glittering in her designer gown, was only a few feet away. Nancy saw me. Her eyes flicked down to the stain, and she smiled. Not kind, not sympathetic, amused. She stepped toward me, took the microphone from the band's singer with the confidence of someone who has never been told no in a meaningful way. "Everyone," she called out, her voice echoing through the tent, "let's give a hand to our fashion icon of the evening." There was a ripple of confused laughter. She turned to me, her smile razor sharp. "Diana, don't worry," she said, loud enough for all 200 guests to hear. "You can't ruin your flimsy dress anymore. So relax. We'll pretend that it's supposed to be like this, that you came in this way." Heat rushed up my neck. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Flimsy dress. Pretend you came this way. The room blurred. I heard my grandchildren whispering, "We're sorry, Grandma." Lucy's small hand tugging my sleeve. Elena somewhere saying, "Nancy, that's enough," and the band muttering awkwardly behind her. All I could see was Nancy's face. The smirk, the satisfaction. This wasn't stress. This wasn't hormones. This was cruelty. I felt something crack inside my chest, not a break, more like a click. Something sliding into place. A tear rolled down my cheek, not because of the dress, or the wine, or the embarrassment, because in that moment, I saw my future clearly. This woman at every birthday, every holiday, every family gathering mocking, belittling, pushing boundaries just to see how far she could go, taking up space in my son's life like she owned it. I looked at Adam. He was sitting at the head table, watching me. His face was white. His hand gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles stood out. Our eyes met. For a second, it was just us again, me and my boy, back in that tiny apartment, sharing a plate of spaghetti, laughing over nothing. All the years between us compressed into a single, fragile thread. Then he stood up. Adam walked up to Nancy. She still had the microphone. He took it out of her hand. "Hey," she protested, laughing nervously. "What are you doing?" He turned to the room. "Everyone," he said, voice steady, echoing through the tent, "thank you for coming." The chatter died instantly. 200 people stared at my son. "The bar is open," he continued. "The food is yours, but the party is over. Please, go home." A stunned silence, then a wave of confused murmurs. Nancy stared at him. "Adam, what is this? Is this some kind of joke?" He turned to her, and there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Something steel hard. "There will be no wedding," he said. The words hit like a physical blow. A collective gasp rushed through the crowd. "Adam," Nancy laughed, the sound shrill. "Very funny. Give me the microphone." He didn't. "Nancy," he said, "you have crossed the line." She froze. "Because of her?" She jabbed a finger in my direction. "Because your mother spilled wine on herself and I made a little joke? You humiliated her," he said, "in front of everyone. After she paid for everything. After she gave you her home. She raised me alone. She worked herself half to death. No one disrespects my mother like that. No one." I stood there, stunned, wine cooling against my skin. Elena had an arm around my shoulders without me even noticing. When she moved there, Nancy's face twisted. "You're overreacting," she hissed. "It was a joke. People are laughing." Look, no one was laughing. My staff stared, silent. The band shuffled their instruments awkwardly. Guests glanced between us all like they were watching a car crash in slow motion. "Pack your things," Adam said quietly. "You will not be living here. This wedding is canceled." "Adam," she shrieked, "you can't do this. My family is here. My friends flew in from Prague. We have paperwork." The slip was small, but I caught it. "Paperwork." Adam shook his head. "I'm so sorry, everyone," he said to the guests again. "Please, enjoy the food. The house is open, but there's nothing more to celebrate." He set the microphone down on the table with a soft thud and walked to me. "Mom," he said quietly, "come on, let's get you cleaned up." I looked at him. "Adam, you don't have to." "Yes," he said. "I do." He led me out of the tent. I heard voices rising behind us, Nancy shouting something about lawyers, her mother wailing in a dramatic soprano, her friends buzzing around her like angry hornets. Inside the house, in the quiet hallway, I leaned against the wall. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "You could have talked to her later. I would have been fine." "Mom," he said, looking at me like I'd grown a second head, "you are never fine when someone humiliates you. You just pretend you are." I should have seen it sooner. I'm not marrying someone who thinks she can treat you like that. I'm not that stupid. I felt tears prick my eyes again. This time, they were different, softer. He'd been my baby, my almost man, my slightly lost grown son. And in that moment, he was something else, mine and entirely his own. I laughed, a shaky sound. "So your solution is to dump her at the altar?" "At the reception," he corrected. "Technically, we're already married in the eyes of the law. The papers were signed yesterday." My heart dropped. "What?" He raked a hand through his hair. "Civil ceremony at City Hall. Her idea." "Less pressure," she said. "Now I know why." I stared at him. "So you're married to her?" "Was," he said. "I'll fix it." He sounded confident. I knew better. Divorce was never simple, especially not with someone like Nancy. "But for now," he said, Go change your dress. You're not spending the rest of the night in a puddle of merlot. He kissed my forehead like he used to when he was a teenager and wanted to distract me from the smell of cigarettes on his hoodie, then walked back toward the chaos. I went upstairs, peeled the stained dress off my body, and stood in my slip, staring at my reflection. Wine stains across the front, mascara smudged, hair askew. I looked dangerous. Because here's the thing. I wasn't just a humiliated mother anymore. I was a woman someone had tried and failed to publicly break. And if there's one thing I'm very, very good at, it's what happens after someone tries to break me. By midnight, the guests were gone. Some left whispering, scandal glinting in their eyes. Others hugged me, offered quiet words of support, muttered that they never liked Nancy anyway. People are very brave after the fact. A few stayed late, hovering awkwardly until I insisted I was all right. The staff cleaned up the shattered pieces of what was supposed to be my son's big day. The tent, the tables, the leftover food, they all went back to the normal world, like the day had been a weird dream. Nancy, however, was very real. She locked herself in the guest room for an hour, crying loud enough for the entire second floor to hear. Her mother banged on the door, whisper shouting, "Think of your future. Think of your status," in some dramatized accent, like we were in a cheap soap opera. When she finally emerged, her mascara streaked and her hair wild, she stormed down the stairs dragging a suitcase, her mother and two friends trailing behind her like an angry entourage. Adam and I were in the foyer. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," she told him, jabbing a finger at his chest. "Maybe," he said tiredly, "but it's mine to make. You embarrass me in front of my family. In front of 200 people. You humiliated my mother in front of 200 people," he replied. "We are not the same." She turned to me, eyes blazing. "You did this. You poisoned him against me." I tilted my head. "That's adorable. You think he needed my help to see what you are?" She stepped toward me. For a second, I wondered if she'd actually slap me. "You will regret this," she hissed. "Both of you." Then she swung around, yanked the front door open, and marched out into the night. Her mother followed, shooting me a look that could have cooked a turkey. Her friends scurried after them, already whispering into their phones. The door slammed. Silence. Adam leaned against the banister, rubbing his eyes. "Well," he said, "that was something." Elena came down the stairs, barefoot, hair in a messy bun, wearing old pajamas that said "World's Okayest Sister." She'd changed out of her dress hours ago. "Is she gone?" she asked. "For now," Adam said. Elena walked over to me and hugged me hard. "You okay?" "I'm surprisingly not dead," I said. "So I guess that's a win." We all laughed too loudly, because the alternative was crying. Eventually, everyone went to bed. Adam to his old room, Elena and her family to the guest rooms they always used. The staff off to their homes exhausted. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house breathe. I knew it wasn't over. Women like Nancy don't just walk away. They circle back, they plot, they sharpen their knives. And sure enough, she did. But that her revenge, my counterattack, and the little matter of her real identity, that's a story for another night. Let's just say, the wine on my dress was the least damaging stain she tried to leave on my life. I wish I could tell you that after the slammed door and the ruined wedding buffet, Nancy just disappeared into the night like a bad smell. Oh, sweetheart, if only life were that generous. Women like Nancy don't just go away. They orbit, they wait, they sharpen their claws, and then they come back for what they think is theirs. The morning after the non-wedding, the house felt like a battlefield after the dust settled. Empty champagne flutes on the sideboard, wilted roses in the vases, a heel from somebody's expensive shoe abandoned near the staircase like a fallen soldier. I woke up before everyone as usual. Habit from all those years of dawn shifts. 60 years old and my brain still thinks a.m. is a good time to torture me. I made coffee in my kitchen, wearing my oldest robe and my new unfamiliar role. Mother of the man who called off his wedding in front of 200 witnesses. Elena came in, hair a mess, eyes puffy. "Coffee," she croaked, "and possibly a shot of brandy." "You're a mother of two," I said. "Act like it." "Brandy goes in the second cup." She snorted and grabbed a mug. "How are you?" "Absolutely radiant," I said. "You?" "My husband is in the guest room with a migraine. My kids are asking why Uncle Adam's wife disappeared. And I have 12 text messages from relatives who just want to understand what happened." She sipped the coffee. "So, you know." "Great." On cue, my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I answered, Because I am an optimist with poor boundaries. Diana speaking. Silence for half a second. Then, a familiar voice, tight with fury. Enjoying yourself? Nancy, I said. Good morning. I take it the honeymoon is off. You think you're funny, she hissed. You humiliated me. I didn't take the microphone, I reminded her. You did. I was busy becoming a human art project for Cabernet Sauvignon. You turned him against me. He watched you kick his mother in the teeth while she was down, I said. If I could turn men that easily, I'd have retired on a yacht at 35. She ignored that. You owe me. Do I? Yes. I planned my life around this marriage. I left my job. I moved into your mausoleum. My family flew here. Do you know how much those tickets cost? This isn't some game, Diana. You owe me compensation. I leaned against the counter, amused in spite of myself. You want me to pay you for not marrying my son? She sniffed. We are married, legally. That little stunt didn't change that. I spoke to a lawyer this morning. Of course she had. He says I have rights, spousal rights, and emotional damages, breach of promise, public humiliation. I have half a mind to sue you for everything you have. Just half? I murmured. Shame. A full one might have helped. Her voice sharpened. This isn't over. I will get what I deserve. On that, I said, we agree. You will absolutely get what you deserve. She hung up. Elena raised an eyebrow. Well, she says I owe her, I said. Elena snorted so hard she almost inhaled her coffee. For what? Emotional terrorism? Apparently for existing, I said. And for having a house she can't redecorate. I should have been more worried. But I'll admit, I'd survived worse threats. Men who swore they'd take my kids. Bosses who told me I'd never get ahead. Life itself, constantly muttering, you can't do this. Compared to that, one angry bride with a wounded ego didn't scare me. That was my first mistake. The first attack came online. By afternoon, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Elena, sending me a link. Don't look, she wrote. So naturally, I clicked it. There it was, for all the internet's nosy Andes to see, a long, tearful post on social media from Nancy. She'd written it in English and Czech for maximum reach. The English version was full of phrases like, abandoned at my own wedding, cruelty from wealthy in-laws, toxic mother-in-law who never accepted me because I'm not from her class or her country. There was a picture attached, Nancy in her wedding dress, mascara streaked, staring tragically out a window. It looked suspiciously well lit for a spontaneous emotional moment. If she'd had a fainting couch, she would have used it. The comments poured in. How could they do this to you? Stay strong, queen. Americans are so cold. You deserve better. My personal favorite. Another immigrant woman punished for wanting a better life. Oh, that one almost made me applaud. The spin was impressive. She's getting sympathy. Elena groaned. Look at this. Her friends are sharing it. People are saying Adam must be a narcissist, that you're abusive, that you're controlling his life. I set the phone down. Let them talk. Mom, Elena, I said, I've been called worse things by better people. I know who I am. Adam knows who I am. You know who I am. I'm not going to battle a bunch of strangers whose emotional investment in this is 30 seconds and a share button. Still, Elena muttered, I'd like to accidentally spill wine on her Wi-Fi router. I smiled. Let her scream into the void for a while. She'll get tired. She did not get tired. Next came the legal threats. A week later, Adam received a letter from Nancy's lawyer, a thick, self-important envelope demanding equitable financial compensation for the distress of the canceled celebration, reimbursement for her family's travel, and a goodwill lump sum to ease her transition. They wanted 6 figures. Is this a joke? Adam asked, dropping the letter on my kitchen table like it might contaminate the wood. It's a wish list, I said, skimming it. Some people send them to Santa. Nancy sends them to lawyers. I don't have this kind of money, he said, rubbing his forehead. She knows that. She thinks I do, I said. He looked up sharply. Well, you're not paying. I smiled at him over my coffee mug. That's the spirit. We hired our own lawyer, a competent, gray-haired woman named Margaret who looked like she'd already verbally disemboweled 3 people before breakfast. She read Nancy's demands, snorted, and said, absolutely not. Our marriage is real though, Adam said. Legally. Yes, Margaret said, which is why we'll be filing for divorce. You've been married for what? A week? No joint property, no children, no shared business. You owe her exactly what the law says you do, which is almost nothing. Almost? I raised an eyebrow. She can make noise, Margaret said. She can drag it out, file motions, claim emotional damage, try to smear you. In the end, the judge will see a short marriage, no entanglements, and a very dramatic woman. But it will cost time and legal fees, which she hopes you'll avoid by throwing money at her, I said. Exactly, Margaret said. We don't recommend that. Good, I said. I prefer throwing something else. She smiled. You strike me as the patient type, Diana, and the stubborn type. You have no idea, I said. If it had stayed lawyers vs. lawyers, I'd have been happy. I know how to fight on paper. I've battled debt collectors and landlords and school boards. Bureaucracy doesn't scare me. But Nancy didn't want just money. She wanted revenge. It happened 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon. Elena and I were in town, grocery shopping like normal people with normal lives, picking out tomatoes and arguing about whether she should let her kids have sugary cereal. My phone buzzed. This time, it was Marta, my housekeeper. Mrs. Diana, she whispered, voice trembling. I'm so sorry to bother you, but she is here. Who? I asked, though I knew. Miss Nancy, Marta said. She came with another lady. They say they are here to collect her things. They have many bags. She is upstairs in your room, in your closet. My grip tightened on the shopping cart. In my closet? Yes, Marta said. She says the dresses are hers now. She is shouting at me. I did not know what to do. You did the right thing calling me, I said. Do not confront her. Stay downstairs. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Elena had heard enough to go pale. She's in the house? I nodded. Apparently, she's decided to go shopping in my wardrobe. I'm coming with you, Elena said. Of course you are, I said. You think I'm facing that Banshee alone? We abandoned the cart, rushed to the car, and drove back to the estate. I broke exactly 3 traffic rules on the way. At 60, I've earned a few tickets. When we pulled up, Nancy's car was in the driveway. She'd parked in my spot. Naturally, we walked into the house to the sound of voices upstairs. Angry, high-pitched voices. In my bedroom, my closet doors were wide open. Nancy was in there, sleeves rolled up, yanking dresses off hangers and tossing them into open suitcases on the floor. Her friend, same sharp manicure, different haircut, was folding scarves into neat stacks. There, Nancy said, grabbing a pale blue silk dress I loved. This one. I told you she had good taste in her younger years, at least. I stepped into the doorway. Careful, I said. That one bites. She whirled around. Oh, she sneered. Look who finally decided to show up. Elena moved to stand beside me. Get out of my mother's closet. It's my closet now, Nancy said. Marital property. My lawyer said I'm entitled to a portion of the household goods. I'm just taking what's mine. That's not how that works, I said. Also, if you're going to steal from me, at least have the decency not to insult my wardrobe while you do it. You ruined my life, she snapped. A few dresses won't even begin to make up for that. You're married to my son, I said. Not to my silk collection. She crossed her arms. Legally, I'm part of this household. I have rights. You also have a brain, I said. Try using it. You are not on the lease. Your name is not on the deed. This house was inherited by me before I ever met you. It's not marital property, and neither is the contents of my closet. I have documentation, she said. So do I said. And my documentation can call the police. Her friend shifted nervously. Maybe we should stay out of this, Petra, Nancy snapped. I raised my eyebrows. Drag your friend into your nonsense too? Classy. I'm not leaving without something, Nancy said. I went through hell because of you. The least you can do is let me take some clothes and jewelry. Call it restitution. I have a better idea, I said. You leave right now with the clothes you came in, and I don't press charges for trespassing and attempted theft. How does that sound? She laughed. You wouldn't dare. I walked over to my dresser, picked up the landline, and started dialing. Her smile wavered. Diana 911, I said into the receiver. Yes, I'd like to report an uninvited person in my house attempting to remove my belongings. No, she does not have permission. No, she does not live here. Nancy grabbed her bag. Fine, she spat. We're leaving. This place is a prison anyway. Then stop breaking back in, I said. As she shoved past me, she paused at the door, leaning in close. Her perfume hit my nose again, expensive, bitter. You are going to regret this, she whispered. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Oh, I do, I whispered back. That's why I'm not letting you take my clothes. She stalked down the hall, Petra scurrying after her. I hung up before the operator dispatched a car, telling them it was resolved. Marta appeared at the end of the corridor, wringing her hands. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Diana. She had a key from before. I did not know she would. I went over and hugged her. This is not your fault. Don't you dare apologize because someone else was raised by wolves. Elena looked at me. We have to change the locks. I'm changing more than the locks, I said. That night, I lay awake and replayed everything I'd ever heard Nancy say. Embassy, visa, paperwork. The way she'd said I planned my life around this marriage. I had a feeling this wasn't just about dresses or money or embarrassment. It was about survival, hers, and my son's. The next morning, I hired a private detective. If you've never hired a private detective before, it feels exactly like it does in movies minus the trench coat and saxophone music. His name was Jack Mercer. Late 50s, tall, silver hair, eyes like he'd seen too much and taken notes. He wore a simple navy suit and carried a leather briefcase that had probably heard secrets I couldn't even imagine. We met in my small office off the library, the same room where I'd once learned about mutual funds and tax brackets. Now I was learning about something else. Background checks on pretty girls with sharp smiles. You understand, I said, pouring him coffee. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I just want to know who I've let into my home. Ma'am, he said, taking the cup, the day I start doing illegal things for clients is the day my ex-wife finally wins one. I liked him immediately. I handed him everything I had, copies of Nancy's texts to Adam that he'd shown me, her basic details, her social media, the name of the city in the Czech Republic she was from, the name of her university, and I repeated those little words she'd said, embassy, visa, paperwork. You think she's here on a visa, he said, jotting notes. I think she's here on a mission, I replied. He smiled faintly. And you want to know if your son was the mission? Exactly, he nodded. I'll see what I can find. Might take a few days. Jack, I said, I waited 10 years for an inheritance and 30 years to have one full night of sleep. I can manage a few days. He stood. I'll be in touch. Elena, of course, had been lurking outside the door and slid in as soon as he left. So, she said, leaning against the desk, is he single? I cracked up. That man has at least 2 ex-wives and a high-maintenance dog. Still, she said, got that seen some stuff vibe. I like it. Stay away from my detective, I said. He's working for me. Ooh, territorial, she teased. Careful, mother. You sound like a woman with options. I rolled my eyes, but privately, I had noticed that Jack was solid, unflappable, the sort of man you'd want next to you when your life caught fire. Not that I was looking. I hadn't dated seriously since my ex-husband left. Men came and went. My independence stayed. Still, a woman can look. 3 days later, Jack came back with a folder that looked satisfyingly thick. We sat in my office again. He opened the folder like a magician about to pull out a rabbit. Except this rabbit was going to wreck somebody's life in a very different way. First off, Jack said, she is who she says she is on paper. Her name is Nancy Novak. She's from a small town outside Prague. Came to the US on a student visa 8 years ago. Degree in marketing. Minor in international relations. Smart kid. Good grades. No criminal record. Wonderful, I said. Shall I knit her a medal? He flipped to the next page. After graduation, she had a work visa tied to a marketing agency. That ended 3 years ago. The agency didn't renew her contract. Why not? I asked. Couple of complaints from co-workers, he said. Nothing official on record, but my contact says she was difficult, took credit for other people's work, flirted aggressively with clients, burned bridges on her way out. Sounds familiar, I muttered. Since then, he continued, she's been on what we might call borrowed time, applying for jobs that would sponsor her state visa, but nothing stuck. Working under the table here and there. According to the immigration documents I found, I sat up straighter. You found her documents? I have friends, he said. Her last legal status was tied to a petition filed 6 months ago by your son. My stomach clenched. Adam filed for her? He nodded. Adjustment of status based on marriage to a U.S. citizen. Standard process. They'd started the ball rolling even before the wedding. She was running out of options. This marriage was her last, best shot at staying in the States legally. So if the marriage ends, I began. She can try other routes, he said, but it's an uphill climb. And there's another layer. He slid another paper toward me. It was an email exchange. Check on one side, English translated on the other. Between Nancy and someone named Carol. My check is non-existent. But Jack pointed out the important parts. This is a friend of hers back home, he said. She writes about finally catching a big fish. That's your son. She mentions your estate, your bank accounts. She'd done her research. She even refers to the marriage as my green card project. Her words, not mine. My jaw tightened. She says, he continued, tapping a highlighted line. I only have to be nice until the papers are done. After that, I can do what I want. His mother is old and soft. She will die, and then the house will be ours. Old and soft. I laughed then. A sharp, humorless sound. I showed this to my daughter, I said. She'd die laughing at soft. There's more, Jack said. She's done this before. Not all the way, but close. 2 years ago, in Chicago, she got engaged to another man. Much older, wealthy. They filed for paperwork. Right before the wedding, his sister hired a PI of her own. Found messages like this. He called it off, quietly. Paid her to go away. How much? I asked. 75 grand, Jack said. I whistled. That's not go away money. That's buy yourself a baby BMW money. The man didn't want drama, Jack said. He was also not single. Nancy may have implied she'd expose him if he didn't pay up. So blackmail, I said. More like leverage, he replied. But close enough. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of it all settling over me. So my son, I said slowly, is her second attempt at a permanent ticket. Looks like it, he said. Difference is, your son's not cheating on anyone. And you, he smiled slightly. You don't strike me as the type to hand over a check to make a problem disappear. Oh, I'll make it disappear, I said. Just not with cash. There's one more thing, he said. After your son canceled the wedding, she filed something with immigration. A preliminary draft of a petition saying she fears emotional and psychological abuse if the marriage dissolves. She might be preparing to claim she's a victim in order to get her own path to permanent residency. I felt heat rise in my chest. So she's going to lie about abuse to get a green card. It happens, he said. And to be fair, some people really are abused. But in this case, she's following a pattern. People like her know the system. I nodded slowly. So if we push for divorce, she'll try to paint my son as a monster, and me as the wicked witch mother. He nodded. Most likely. I stared at the papers again. Her messages, her plans, her contempt. Thank you, Jack, I said quietly. This is exactly what I needed. He hesitated. What are you going to do? I smiled. Oh, I'm going to give Nancy a choice, I said. The one thing manipulators hate most. A choice where every outcome is controlled by someone else. I didn't go to her apartment. I'm not reckless. I invited her to a very public cafe downtown. Big windows, plenty of witnesses, good pastries, in case I needed comfort carbs. She arrived 10 minutes late, wearing oversized sunglasses and an attitude. So, she said, sliding into the chair opposite me, has your conscience finally decided to pay me? Good morning to you too, I said. Coffee? I ordered mine already, she said. I like it strong. Of course you do, I murmured. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were hard. No trace of the teary bride. Let's not waste time, she said. Your son's lawyer sent me his divorce petition. I'm not signing anything until I get what I deserve. Funny, I said. That's exactly why I called you here. She leaned forward. So you admit you owe me? I admit, I said, that life owes you a lesson. I'm just the delivery system. She rolled her eyes. You're not funny, Diana. You're old and bitter. I prefer seasoned and observant, I said. And I've been observing you. Do you know what I found? She tensed. Just slightly. Nothing, she said. Because there's nothing to find. I reached into my bag and set the folder Jack had prepared on the table. I didn't open it. I just let it sit there like a quiet threat. Nancy, I said, I know about Chicago. I know about the older man, the almost wedding, the $75,000, the not-so-subtle hints about exposing him to his wife. Her face drained of color. I continued, voice steady. I know about your emails to your friend Carol, the big fish, the green card project, the part where you called me old and soft and said you'd wait for me to die so you and my son could own my house. Her jaw clenched. I know about your visa status, I said. How this marriage was your last chance to stay here legally. How you were hoping the papers would go through before you showed your true self. And I know about the draft you filed since claiming emotional and psychological abuse, just in case you need a different kind of story to tell the authorities. She sat very still. You had no right to dig into my life. You walked into my home, I said, married my son, tore up my house, screamed at my staff, humiliated me at a wedding I paid for, and then broke into my closet. You made your life my business. She swallowed. You can't prove any of that. I tapped the folder. I can prove enough. I can't tell immigration what to do, but I can show them what you did to that man in Chicago and what you planned with my son. They tend to be very sensitive about people using marriage as a ticket. She glared at me. So that's your grand plan? Deport me? Unlike you, I said calmly. I don't play puppet master with governments. I won't lie. I won't embellish. I'll just hand over the truth and let them decide. Her hands tightened around her cup. You're bluffing. I leaned back. Try me. Her eyes darted to the folder. For the first time since I met her, I saw it. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Here's what I'm offering, I said. Option 1. You fight. You drag my son through court. You lie about abuse. You pose as a poor, heartbroken immigrant girl who was abandoned by a cruel family. You might even manage to win the sympathy of a few people. But while you do that, I send everything I have to the authorities. I involve the Chicago man if he's willing. I let the immigration officers connect the dots. I let that sink in. Option 2, I continued. You stop. You sign the divorce papers. No more online posts. No more break-ins. No more demands. You walk away from my family completely. And what do I get? She asked, voice tight. A plane ticket wherever you want, I said. Plus enough money to start over modestly somewhere that isn't my backyard. Not BMW money. Bus pass money. You like Prague? Great. You want to go somewhere else? Fine. But you go. She laughed, short and bitter. You think you can buy me off with pocket change? I think, I said slowly, that you're smart enough to recognize when the game is over. My son is done. He will never trust you again. You have no access to my accounts. My house is locked down. The only leverage you have left is your story, and I'm holding the counter story in my hand. I tapped the folder again. You're bluffing, she repeated, but less sure. I shrugged. Then call my bluff. Keep posting. Keep lying. Keep threatening to sue. See how far you get before someone in a uniform starts asking questions about that email where you called my son your green card project. She went very quiet. For a long time, we just sat there. Her coffee grew cold. Finally, she said, and if I agree, if I sign, if I go, then this, I said, nudging the folder toward my bag again, stays between us. It never sees a courtroom or an immigration desk. You walk away with enough to restart. You don't come back. Not for holidays. Not for reunions. Not for one last scream in my foyer. You disappear from our lives. Permanently. You're cruel, she whispered. I smiled sadly. No, Nancy. I'm kind. If I were cruel, I'd just let the system chew you up. I'm giving you a chance to leave with some dignity and a small cushion. She stared at me, hatred and calculation and irony all tangled in her gaze. My lawyer will say this is blackmail, she said. Your lawyer can say a lot of things, I replied. But I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I'm offering you money and a ticket in exchange for your signature and your silence. That's called a settlement. Happens every day. She dropped her eyes. What if I want to stay in the States? She asked softly. Then you should have built a life here without trying to steal someone else's, I said. I'm not your enemy, Nancy. I'm just the last woman you underestimated. We left it there. I gave her a week to think. Nancy took 5 days. On the 5th day, Margaret called. She called me. My lawyer said, Nancy says she'll sign uncontested divorce papers, no demands, no claim on anything, in exchange for a confidential settlement of a very reasonable size, I said. Very reasonable, Margaret agreed. Are you sure? Yes, I said. I'm not in the business of destroying people, just rerouting them. We drafted the documents. Adam signed first. His hand shook, but his eyes were clear. I'm sorry, Mom, he said as he slid the papers across the table to Margaret. I should have seen it sooner. You loved her, I said. That's never a crime. Being blind for a while, that's human. Staying blind when the lights are on, that's the mistake you avoided. He laughed a little. I'm done with weddings for a while. Take your time, I said. And next time, we're doing a background check before the cake tasting. Nancy signed a day later, in Margaret's office. I didn't see her. I chose not to. Some doors, once closed, should stay shut. The settlement was wired to a separate account. A plane ticket one way. Economy was booked in her name. 2 weeks later, Jack forwarded me a simple screenshot from an airport in Europe. There she was, walking through customs, sunglasses on, luggage in hand, not in handcuffs, not dragged away, just moving on. Bitter? Probably. Plotting? Almost certainly, but far away, and not our problem anymore. I printed the photo and tucked it into the folder with the rest of the documents. Then I locked the folder in my safe. Insurance? I told Elena when she asked. In case she gets creative again. You think she will? Elena asked. I said. She's smart enough to realize there are other fish in the sea, and very few of them come with an angry 60-year-old mother and a private detective attached. After Nancy left, the house was quiet. Too quiet at first. No more screaming matches in the hallway. No more slammed doors. No more late-night sobbing that felt more staged than sincere. Just quiet. Adam moved back into his old room for a while, licking his wounds. He went to therapy at my gentle insistence and Margaret's not-so-gentle recommendation. I'm fine. He'd protested at first. You married a woman who saw you as a passport, I said. You're not fine, sweetheart. You're functional. There's a difference. He found a good therapist who helped him untangle his guilt from his disappointment. They talked about patterns, boundaries, self-worth. He learned that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. Elena kept showing up with lasagna and sarcasm. Her husband, Tomas, played board games with Adam in the evenings, saying nothing about the wedding unless Adam brought it up. My grandchildren, once they understood that Aunt Nancy wasn't coming back, stopped asking where she was. Kids are kind that way. They move on faster than we do. As for me, well, I realized something in the middle of all that. For decades, my whole life had been about other people, my children, my work, my grandfather's legacy, my responsibilities. Even my battles were about protecting someone Adam's heart, my staff's dignity, my family's home. I'd spent my 20s surviving, my 30s hustling, my 40s building, my 50s managing crises with a spreadsheet in one hand and a bandage in the other. Now I was 60. Nancy was gone. The inheritance was still invested wisely. My children were grown. The house, while still needy, could survive a week without me hovering over it. I sat on the back porch one evening, watching the sun set over the trees, and thought, what if the next chapter is actually about me? It was a wild idea. I started small. I took a painting class in town. Me, the woman who'd only ever painted walls. I joined a book club with other women my age and listened to them complain about husbands who forgot their anniversaries and knees that creaked in the morning. I laughed and told them they should be grateful for creaky knees. It meant they were still moving. I took trips, short ones at first. A weekend to the coast. A week in New Orleans with Elena, where we drank cocktails at noon and pretended we were 25 until our feet hurt and we went to bed at 9. Then, one afternoon, Jack came by to drop off the final receipt and paperwork. You look different, he said, standing in my office doorway. Probably the lack of screaming brides, I said. It's good for the skin. He smiled. How's your son? Healing, I said. How's your ex-wife? Still winning everything, he said. At least in her mind. We shared a look that only people over 50 really understand. Mutual exhaustion and stubborn humor. You know, he said, I don't usually say this to clients, but if you ever need anything else, even if it's just a recommendation for the best diner in town, you can call. The man who knows everyone's secrets also knows where to get good pie, I said. Figures. He hesitated. Or, you know, if you ever wanted to grab coffee when we're not discussing fraud and deportation risk. I raised an eyebrow. Mr. Mercer, are you asking me out? He coughed. I'm saying I'm available for both professional and non-professional caffeine consumption. I smiled. As long as you understand that any man in my life answers to my grandchildren first. I've interrogated mobsters, he said. I can handle a 6-year-old with a juice box. We ended up having that coffee. Turns out, underneath the file folders and the slightly rumpled suit, he was funny and kind and had a ridiculous love of old jazz records. He'd also been burned before by people who lied, used, took. We didn't fall madly in love on the spot. That's for teenagers and telenovelas. We did, however, become something good. A slow, steady warmth. A companion on walks. A hand to hold when the news was bad. A partner to argue with about whether raisins belong in cookies. They do not. I will die on this hill. Love, I learned at 60, doesn't have to be fireworks. It can be a well-tended flame that doesn't go out when the wind picks up. Now, about revenge. You might think the revenge was in the folder, the immigration leverage, the plane ticket, but that was just containment, defense. The real revenge? That came later. It came when other women started asking me for advice. Word gets around in families. Cousins whispered, friends whispered. Before long, I had women pulling me aside at church, at the grocery store, at school events. My daughter is dating this man who treats her like a pet. One woman said, "What do I do?" My son married someone who screams at him for breathing wrong, another said. I don't want to be that mother-in-law, but I started inviting them over. I'd sit them at my big dining table, the one Nancy wanted to replace, with coffee and pie and my full attention. I'd tell them my story, the 3 jobs, the inheritance, the estate, the non-wedding, the break-in, the detective, the folder, the calf conversation. And then I'd tell them the part that mattered most. I didn't just protect my son, I'd say. I protected myself. I refused to let someone treat me like I was disposable just because I loved the person they were using. We talked about boundaries, about checking backgrounds without shame, about watching how someone treats waiters and cleaners, about trusting your gut when a smile doesn't reach the eyes. I started joking that I was running a mother-in-law boot camp. Lesson 1, I'd say. You are not an ATM with feelings. You are a human being with a spine. Lesson 2. Loving your kids doesn't mean loving everyone they drag home. Lesson 3. If someone humiliates you publicly, you don't swallow it to keep the peace. Peace built on your humiliation is not peace. It's a hostage situation. Elena rolled her eyes and told me I should start a podcast. Please, I said. I'm 60. I barely mastered group texts, but when she suggested I record this story for her friend's YouTube channel, I thought, why not? If my humiliation in an ivory dress could turn into a cautionary tale that helped some other woman spot a Nancy before the wedding invitations went out, that was a revenge I could live with. Because the best revenge isn't sending someone to prison or bankrupting them. The best revenge is living well, loudly, and in a way that makes their worst predictions about you completely wrong. Nancy expected me to be old and soft. Instead, I was older and sharper. She expected my son to be permanently in her orbit. Instead, he broke out and learned how to spot a predator next time. She expected to live in my house. Instead, I kept my house, my family, my sanity. And I went to Paris with Elena for my 61st birthday. Yes, Paris. I ate pastries on actual cobblestone streets and flirted in broken French with a waiter half my age. Don't tell Jack. Or do. He already knows I'm trouble. You're probably wondering about the dress. The ivory one, ruined by wine. Ruined by a child's clumsy push and a bride's sharp tongue. I didn't throw it away. I sent it to a cleaner in town who specializes in impossible stains. The woman there, a tiny powerhouse named Linda, looked at it, whistled, and said, "Lady, did you wrestle a vineyard in this thing?" Something like that, I said. She worked miracles. When I got it back, the stain was almost gone, not invisible. If you knew where to look, if you held it up to the light, you could still see a faint shadow of red across the front. I put it on one afternoon, just to see, it still fit. I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, the same mirror that had reflected my shock and shame that day, and smiled. I wore that dress again, you know, not to a wedding. To a party I threw myself, a summer party at the estate, just family and close friends. Kids running around the lawn, music playing, margaritas sweating on the table. No fragile egos, no hidden agendas, just people who'd been through the last year with me and were still there, solid as the old oak in the garden. Elena took one look at me coming down the stairs and grinned. "You're wearing that?" she asked. "I am," I said. "Improved edition. Aren't you worried someone will spill again?" "They probably will," I said. "The dress can handle it." "So can I." Adam came over, hugged me, and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mom. You divorced a viper." I whispered back, "I'm proud of you." Later, as the sun set and the sky turned the color of peach sorbet, my grandchildren crashed into me while chasing each other. "Careful," Elena shouted. "Grandma's dress." I laughed and pulled them both into a tight hug. "If it gets stained again," I said, "we'll make it part of the design." because that's the thing nobody tells you when you're young. The stains, the scars, the imperfect parts, they're not what ruin you. They're what make you interesting. I am 60 years old. I raised 2 children on 4 hours of sleep a night. I worked myself to the bone, inherited more than I ever imagined, and still chose to keep working so my kids would understand the value of effort, not just money. I hosted a wedding that turned into a battlefield. I watched my son's heart break and refused to let his spirit break with it. I stared down a woman who saw my family as a transaction and taught her that some of us still know how to fight without losing ourselves. I found a new kind of love when I wasn't looking for it. I started over at an age when the world likes to tell women to sit down and be quiet. I am not sitting down. I am not quiet. So if you take anything from my story, if you're watching this on a screen somewhere, listening to the voice of a woman in her 60s talk about wine and weddings and visas and revenge, let it be this. You are allowed to start over at any age. You are allowed to defend your dignity without apologizing. You are allowed to be the queen in your own story, even if your dress gets ruined. Especially if your dress gets ruined. My name is Diana, and I came to my son's wedding in an ivory dress. I left without a daughter-in-law, but I walked away with something much better. My self-respect, my family, and a story that, hopefully, will keep a few more women from ever letting a Nancy run their lives. Now, who wants dessert?